Hi, I'm Jason Heath with Eastman Strings, and we're taking a look today at the equipment associated with the bass. There's all kinds of gear that you use to play this instrument. I want to start by looking at the equipment on the bass itself. And we're going to start with the bridge. You'll notice on my bass, I have these two bridge adjusters, and you are likely to have bridge adjusters on your bass as well. They're something that you'll not touch much yourself, but your teacher or a bass luthier, someone who maintains instruments, they might adjust those for you from time to time. These let the bridge go up and down. And because the bass is so big, we have to adjust those more often than the other string instruments. The wood in the summer expands and it makes the bridge get taller. In the winter it contracts, it makes the bridge get a little lower. So we have to adjust that periodically depending on where we live. But that's something that your teacher or a professional can help you with. You'll notice on my bass, I also have what's called a pickup. I have this wire running down and it's connected to a jack down on the tailpiece. And that is something that bass players frequently have. It's so that I can plug into an amplifier and play jazz or other types of music. You may not have that on your bass. In fact, you probably don't. But as you go on with your bass playing life, it's likely that you'll do some amplified playing. So that's what that's for. We also have some unusual gear for bass that you probably don't have on your bass, but I'll just show so you understand what's on my bass. We have bass extensions. So I have an extension on my bass, and that lets the bass go really low. So we can get down to nice low notes on the bass. We can talk more about that later. Now, last piece of gear on the bass I want to talk about is the end pin. And the end pin is what lets you adjust the height so you can get the height of the bass set so that it's right for you. Generally, you want to have the bass set so that the nut, this part right here, right where the strings attach to the scroll and start to go up, you want that to be roughly around your eyebrow. There are lots of different ways to measure this kind of thing, but you don't want it too high or too low. When your hand is down here in first position, it should be about eye level, somewhere right around there. So to adjust the end pin, we tighten and loosen this little thumb screw and we find the right height for us. Now on my end pin, I have these notches. So I need to make sure that thumb screw is right in the notch, or when I stand up with my bass, the end pin might fall down. You may or may not have those notches, but you just want to make sure if you do that thumb screw is going right into the notch. And you'll get to know how many notches out you need if you have them. If not, you'll just learn if it's 5 inches that you need out, 7 inches, 3 inches. It's different for every person and every bass. The bow is a really interesting piece of gear on the bass, and there are two different styles of bow. I have what's called a French bow, and this looks very much like a cello bow or a violin bow or a viola bow. It's just a little bit shorter, actually. You might think bass is bigger, you'd have a bigger bow. Actually, we have a shorter bow. It's bigger in terms of all these parts. They're larger, but the actual length of the bow is a little bit shorter. There's another type of bow you might have called a German bow. So this is French bow. German bow, this part of the bow, this frog, is longer, deeper, it's bigger, it's like a C right here. And the screw right here is long, narrow, slender, and looks just a little bit different than this. The French bow that I have right here, this is what we use for an overhand grip, which is going to look like the other string players. The German bow uses what's called an underhand grip, and everything else is very, very similar. They're just two different styles of bow, and about half of bass players play the French bow, and about half of bass players play the German bow. Now, to tighten and loosen our bow, we use this thumb screw. And we want to give it usually about 5 complete turns to tighten it up correctly. We want to make sure there's a little bit of a bend in the stick still, and your stick might look different than mine. It's quite possible. When we start playing, we give it about 5 complete turns. When we're done playing, we always want to make sure we loosen it the same amount so that the hair gets almost a little bit loose. You can see that in the hair. If we forget to do that, it's going to wear out our hair and it can actually damage the bow. So you want to make sure that you loosen the bow after you play. The next piece of gear I want to talk about is rosin, and this is super important for all string players, but especially for bass. You want to make sure that you get your own special bass rosin. It's different than violin, viola, and cello rosin. It's much stickier, and you can see my rosin. You can see how sticky that rosin is. You can actually see where the bow has connected with that rosin there. We generally want to put on between 2 and 3 swipes of rosin every time we play. But you can put on too much rosin, especially in the summer, and you can also put on too little in the winter. So I usually recommend that people start with 2 swipes and then see how it feels. And the way we do that is we hold the rosin in one hand and we start here at the frog and we just do this direction. You can actually kind of hear the rosin going on the bow like that. The last piece of equipment I want to talk about here today is a rock stop. This is important, especially if you're playing on a tile floor or a wood floor. I'm carpeted in here, so I don't need this, but if I was in a wooden floored room, I would want something like this to both protect the floor, but also keep my instrument from sliding around, because the bass and the cello have sharp end pins. Now, my bass happens to have a built-in rock stop, but if it didn't have it and yours is likely to not have it, you'll want to get a rock stop and use one of these. So that's a little bit about bass gear. It's such a great instrument. I keep all this gear in my case and I just pull it out every time I play.